Hello everyone, welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. Tonight, saving Jacksonville's historic structures. Later we'll hear from Mike Langton, urban infill developer, but now we welcome Edward Booth Jr. from the Historical Society Board of Directors to talk about Jacksonville's most endangered structures, an update on our list of most endangered structures. Ed, welcome.
Hello, Harry.
Why do we do this? Why do we have a list of most endangered, or 12 worth saving, as you're calling it?
Well, our buildings represent our heritage, and at the Historical Society every year we monitor a number of structures that we have determined over the years to be endangered. Endangered by demolition, endangered by neglect. And we watch these closely, and this year we've come up with a list of 12 that we believe to be both endangered and worthy of saving.
So let's go to the list, and not in any particular order.
No particular order, but I'm sure the viewers will recognize many, if not all, of these properties. So, turning to our first structure, this is the Lydell School, Public School number 4. The viewers will recognize this as being at the junction of Interstate 10 and Interstate 95. This building was constructed in 1917, was eventually renamed the Lydell School in honor of its former principal. It has a very distinctive neoclassic portico that's seen daily by thousands and thousands of motorists on the 3 different levels of the new Interstate 10, Interstate 95 interchange. The building has been subject to vandals over the years. For some reason it has been thought that there is some sort of paranormal activity that goes on inside the building, and it has resulted in trespassers and graffiti artists from around the country invading on a regular basis. But it's a very handsome structure that could be put to a number of uses. It is a very solid framework of concrete.
The DOT or whoever, the expressways, have rendered it somewhat of a challenge in terms of saving, I would say.
As you see from this view, there are no fewer than 3 levels of interstate traffic that come right past the front of the building. But nonetheless, it does have some potential, and we hope that someone will step up and attempt to save it. The next property is also very familiar to the viewers, sometimes called the Jaguar Building, properly known as the Guarantee Trust and Savings Bank. This was one of the first structures built after the Great Fire of 1901. The original structure dates to 1902 with a very well-done addition built in 1917.
So Bay and Ocean?
At the corner of Bay and Ocean.
Yeah.
Was modified with Jaguar logos many years ago, and it's basically known as the Jaguar Building, but it's an excellent example of early 20th century bank architecture, and it is in some fairly advanced stages of deterioration. This next shot shows the interior of the building. You can see on the right the former vault that was used during its days as a bank, but it's suffering from rather severe water damage. It's for sale. The price has recently been reduced, and hopefully someone will take care of this and perhaps convert it into an office building. The next structure is the Ford Motor Company assembly plant. Very few people realize that Ford motor cars were assembled in Jacksonville during the 1920s. And this is the building where that activity took place. The building is distinctive or noteworthy in that a noted architect by the name of Albert Kahn designed it. He designed over 1,000 buildings for Henry Ford.
These were Model T?
These were Model Ts.
Yep.
And during its heyday, it employed some 800 people and built over 200 Model Ts a day.
Wow.
This is an aerial view looking down on it. You can see it from the Matthews Bridge if you look towards the northeast as you're headed northbound on the Matthews Bridge. It's a handsome red brick structure. It has quite a bit of potential for, could be put back to use warehousing, manufacturing, a festival marketplace. There really are quite a few options that are available to this building, but we believe it's an important part of Jacksonville's history and should be saved. The next structure is the Gray Hotel at New Berlin. This was built in 1880 and is Jacksonville's oldest surviving wooden structure. It was built by a U.S. Navy deserter by the name of Thomas James Gray. He operated this home as a hotel for many years, catering to the winter visitors that frequented the area back in the turn of the last century. Mr. Gray lived there until his death in 1941, and it's without a doubt the oldest tourist-related building that survives in Duval County. It retains a lot of its original ornamentation and character. It is unfortunately going to have to be moved somewhere because of development plans in that area, but it's readily movable, can be placed on a barge and moved just about anywhere in Duval County.
Okay.
Here's a view looking towards the river, showing the Dames Point Bridge Expressway behind it. Some interesting features such as the original water tower from the structure still exist. And the interior is in more or less original shape and would lend itself well to a historically accurate renovation. We're going to change pace a little bit here. We're not going to talk about a building, but we're going to talk about a train. Jacksonville was an area where a lot of railroading activity took place during the early 1900s, and this is a living example of this. This is Atlantic Coastline Engine number 1504. Longtime Jacksonville residents will remember this from the perch it held in front of the Atlantic Coastline, Seaboard Coastline, now CSX Building on Water Street for many years. It was moved by the city of Jacksonville about 20 years ago to the parking lot of the Prime Osborne Convention Center, and as this plaque attests to, it is owned by the city of Jacksonville. This is Mayor Hazuri accepting possession of the locomotive on behalf of the citizens of Jacksonville. The city owns it and in theory is responsible for maintaining it.
But has not maintained
it. Is suffering from serious neglect. This shows the type of corrosion that is eating away at its superstructure. It ideally should be indoors. Again, was built in 1919, was typical of the type of locomotive that was saw duty in the later days of World War I, and it carried passengers from Jacksonville to Richmond, Virginia for nearly 30 years before being retired in the 1940s. It's noteworthy in that it has been designated a National Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark, and we would like to see it properly restored and placed under cover.
And the Historical Society isn't just interested in buildings. There are other things that are historic that, that we're concerned
Items
about.
that are part of our history,
Sure.
and this train is certainly one of them. The next structure is the Barnett National Bank Building. It is a prime example of the architectural styles of the 1920s. At 18 stories tall, it remained the tallest building in Jacksonville for over 28 years. A recent attempt at renovation has failed, but we understand there's hope on the horizon that a company may come in and do a proper, historically accurate restoration and return this to service as an office building.
And unlike some of the other buildings, it's not hasn't been a lot of water damage. And
no, it is a solid structure.
Okay.
In this same area, well, some additional views of the nice character of the Barnett building. We next go around the corner to the Bisbee Building. This is a 1909 skyscraper, Jacksonville's first skyscraper, perhaps the tallest building in Florida at the time it was erected in 1909, designed by noted local architect H.J. Clutho. It's 10 stories, and it's very reminiscent of the Chicago style of high-rise architecture from the turn of the last century. It, we have learned, may have a purchaser, and so it may be saved probably as residential living space. Some other views of the building.
And our view, Historical Society's view, is we don't want to save buildings and just have them sit there. We want them to be put to some new use.
They need to be adapted for modern uses. And this is a slight adaptation. This was the Jazz Festival last year. They set up the stage in front of a couple of historic buildings, and as you can see from this view, they make a nice backdrop. So hopefully they have a future. This next building is part of that same trio The Florida Life Building, built in 1912, also designed by H.J. Clutho. It had some interesting terracotta ornamentation that has been removed and is in storage, and hopefully this can also find reuse. This is the entrance to the building. Again, stripped of much of its ornamentation, but that could be placed back. Next, as part of this trio, we have what is commonly called the Marble Bank. It is the old Florida National Bank, stands on Forsyth Street, built in 1902. A 1916 modification added an interior skylight. A drop ceiling was later put in underneath that. A 1978 restoration restored the 1916 splendor, and this has survived a long time and will hopefully be put to a new use before too long. As you can see now, there are trees growing from the eaves. The glass is broken, but it is structurally sound and ready to be put back to use. Another building is the Jewish Community Center, built in 1928 in Springfield. This housed one of Jacksonville's largest auditoriums.
Some people will know this as the Job Corps.
The Job Corps Center.
Job Corps building,
but
right.
This is one that could easily be adapted to other modern uses. On Riverside Avenue, Fire Station number 5, it has been swallowed up by the development around it, but was a working fire station as recently as a year and a half ago. This shot shows you how it has been overshadowed by development, but it is an important part of Jacksonville's history and certainly could be put to some modern uses.
And it would have to be moved, probably.
And it could be.
Yeah, it could be moved, okay.
And then finally on our list, a more modern structure from the mid-century, last century, is Friendship Fountain. This is a symbol of Jacksonville. Any NFL broadcast invariably features this in the cutaway shots. And it is imperiled because of the water jet system is barely functioning. The high altitude water jets do not work anymore. This is a centerpiece for activities in Jacksonville, a real symbol of the community, and it should be fixed. I don't know that it needs to be restored, but the plumbing needs to be fixed.
Well, people who haven't seen it when it was operating properly might not know that there's anything wrong.
That's true.
But the fountain is supposed to function in a much more spectacular manner.
So we hope that by sharing this list with the viewers that there will be a push to...
So that's our list of 12 worth saving. And, you know, people might want to know, well, have there been success stories in Jacksonville with historic buildings? And there have, and we should probably briefly mention them.
There have. The Florida Theater is my favorite example. It was ready to be torn down when in the early 1980s was restored to its 1928 splendor.
The Prime Osborne, an old railroad station.
City Hall.
And City Hall, yeah. And the Clutho Apartments. So there are a number of them, and that's what we're seeking with this list of 12.
Exactly, and we're here to promote people who will step up and take care of these buildings.
Well, Edward Booth Jr., thank you for being with us on the Jacksonville History Show. And stay with us. Mike Langton and Jerry Spinks will be here in a moment.